now to our second conversation. We head to South Africa, which has proposed importing 75 to 100 million cubic meters of liquefied natural gas annually from the U.S. over 10 years, unlocking up to $12 billion in trade. The offer made during President Ramaphosa's visit to the White House aims to improve strained U.S.-South Africa relations. The proposal includes U.S. investment in gas infrastructure and duty-free quotas for vehicles, steel, aluminium, and components. It addresses South Africa's looming gas shortage as Mozambique's supplies decline, while also encouraging domestic exploration despite environmental concerns. We speak now with Craig Morkel, energy enthusiast. He joins me on the conversation from Cape Town, South Africa. It's a pleasure to have you here. All right, we are hopefully, I think you're muted. If you can unmute yourself so that we can progress with this conversation. I mean, so much happening between South Africa and the United States, strange relationships, even with a visit to the U.S., to the White House from Ramaphosa last week, didn't exactly yield the results that we expected or that were anticipated with Trump's reactions and allegations. But now, in an effort to mend those ties, we have this move to strengthen trade, right? So do we have your audio now?
Yes, you do.
Great, yeah. I can hear you. So let's begin, right? Yeah. South Africa, US, it's hard to hear those two names without somewhat cringing at the moment with what the relationship is like. How do you think this move could remedy, this proposal could remedy ties between South Africa and the United States?
Well, it's a continuation of an existing set of relationships that could enhance and improve trade relations between South Africa and the US. So it's not like we're doing business with each other for the first time. This has been ongoing for more than a century. I think what's new is that since the Trump administration taken office, it has removed restrictions on oil and gas that were introduced by the Biden administration. This opens up the opportunity for more trade in oil and gas now that the presidents have kind of reset the relationship. I think the key thing is that deal is a strategic one that will be defined in more detail between the respective trading partners and their respective companies that are involved in the oil and gas trade. So we see this happening upstream, midstream, and downstream, but starting with midstream importation of LNG, expanding into the support for further exploration and production, both offshore and onshore in South Africa. Besides the US activities in the region, which could also fit South Africa, in particular in Mozambique and Namibia, especially in the Orange Basin.
Right, so $12 billion over 10 years spent on buying US LNG. What are your thoughts on this? How does this benefit South Africa specifically? We know that America, US, is or was the destination, the second largest destination for South African exports. So who benefits from this proposal, $12 billion on US LNG?
No, certainly there's mutual benefit, right? So we are sitting with a very important gas cliff challenge that if we do not solve, we will lose approximately 70,000 plus jobs in South Africa that depends on gas supply from Mozambique at present. That gas supply is dwindling. Of course, as the alternative to that in the short term, and when I say short term, within the next 2 years or so, to have a final investment decision in place to match the deadline date, the day zero of gas supply from Mozambique, South Africa. LNG is a quick solution to deploy. You certainly have LNG production happening all over, including by US companies in Southern Africa and not only in the US. So it is a quick solution to get jobs maintained in South Africa whilst also exporting then products that are manufactured by those very workers, those 70,000 plus workers. They manufacture goods that are being exported to the US that the US also needs. So it's mutual benefit, really.
So give us more of a picture of what this could potentially do for South Africa's energy landscape. What infrastructure investments as well will be needed to support this large-scale LNG imports into South Africa from the US? And who's expected to fund that, more importantly?
Yes, so certainly South Africa has more than just a gas crisis that's looming. We have an ongoing electricity crisis with occasional blackouts that are avoided by load shedding, right? Able to avoid what happened in Spain and Portugal by using load shedding, but we really need to increase our generation capacity, and we can do so with gas to power. Besides renewables, nuclear and coal, we need to reduce our coal consumption as well. So this is an opportunity to strengthen our security of supply. The US gas is the cheapest at present in terms of the Henry Hub index at which US gas is sold. Right? So we can secure that gas to get going in the meantime, whilst we're also inviting US companies to participate in our upstream industry to explore and produce gas both onshore and offshore South Africa. This would then contribute to our long-term sustainability and reindustrialization as a country. In the supply chain for the LNG, there will be some infrastructure required at our respective ports. That infrastructure could include US participants in the supply chain for that infrastructure, whether it be the vessels, the mooring infrastructure, the other related equipment to store, to regasify, and even eventually a pipeline from the ports to the various anchor off-takers. Primarily the anchor off-takers would be gas to power. And the secondary, but equally important off-takers would be industrial and transport off-takers of that gas. So we look forward to working with US companies that we worked with before in South Africa and in the region, but without the constraints of the Biden administration on oil and gas. I hope that's clear.
Right. So you have highlighted, of course, US gas being cheaper, or the cheapest. But then there are also questions, especially with the trade policies coming out of the US right now. A lot of countries are looking, and communities, Africa, continents are looking within the conversation around self-reliance. So, I mean, there's a lot. It seems like a proposal to the US. How do you think other African counterparts who do have gas to export to South Africa will receive this news?
Well, when we say US interests, it doesn't mean that the point of origin of US gas supply to South Africa will actually originate in the US itself. It might be a US company that has exploration and production, perhaps even liquefaction facilities in Southern Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa that would make it quite easy to transport instead of from the US itself. So the deal needs to be specified further on the actual LNG export terminal from which LNG would be exported to South Africa. That is the level of detail that we still need to get to, and the negotiations will continue for the next few months before we will have clarity on that.
All right, we'll see how far that goes. But again, how far do you see this going in terms of strengthening ties with the United States? We know that Ramaphosa is trying to reset the relationship right now that South Africa has with the United States. How far do you think this will go?
Well, we will certainly be negotiating not only the sale of equipment and services from the US or by US companies that operate in the region. We certainly are looking at the financial investment that would make these projects a reality. Certainly, we don't have the balance sheet in South Africa to do this on our own. We will need foreign direct investment. And the US is the largest financial market at present through which to attract such investment into South Africa and the rest of Africa. We all have certainly the relationship with the US and Africa defined under AGOA. There are regular meetings between the AU and the US, besides the AU and other trading partners. And we'll see this culminate in some more announcements, I believe, by the G20 summit, which will be hosted in South Africa later this year, at which time we will be handing over the South African president. The G20 will be handed over to the US at the G20 summit happening in South Africa in November this year.
All right. I mean, interesting moves being made there. We know that there are also a number of reforms as well going on in South Africa. For example, South Africa's land reform and black economic empowerment policies that continues to affect trade negotiations with the U.S. Can you let us into how it's affecting, negotiations?
No, I'm not aware that this has come as specific in the negotiations thus far. What we do know is that the Trump administration has taken a strong view on what it calls DEI, diversity, empowerment, and so on, and inclusion. So this is an issue that will certainly come up in the negotiations. I think the policy is clear that it's not intended in South Africa to use black economic empowerment as a means of reverse racism. It is in fact a restorative justice approach to fix what had been damaged in the past in terms of not only race relations, but also the socio-economic quality of life was hierarchical in terms of the apartheid era government's policy. This has never really been corrected, but expropriation of land with compensation can only be done in the national interest, and taking a farmer and taking his land away is not in the national interest, because our farmers are very good at food production and ensure our food security. By taking land away, it might be not utilized properly, and therefore this particular definition of national interest is for primarily servitudes and rights of way, so that we can build pipelines, transmission lines, roads, and other infrastructure, not to punish anyone for the sins of their forefathers. Really, it's as simple as that.
Interesting. We'll see how far this goes. But finally, looking at the impact, we know this, sticking with this proposal, right, and not the larger issues, what impact, we know that there's somewhere in there we have a proposed duty-free quota on vehicles, steel and aluminium. What impact do you see this having on South Africa's automotive and manufacturing sector?
Yes, I think the key thing is that, in the steel market, for example, we are all throughout the world. China is considered the cheapest producer of steel. And so our main competitor really in the global steel market is China. With this particular approach by the US, it gives us a competitive advantage in terms of price to export to the US. We have a large iron ore reserve and resource that can be utilized. We have companies like ArcelorMittal that are producing steel products with some beneficiation, value addition before it's being exported, not just the raw material. When it comes to vehicles, we assemble many brands of original equipment manufacturers that are based in Europe. We, as far as I know, we manufactured or assembled some US products on behalf of General Motors, such as Chevrolet, for a period of time. We can continue doing that and expand that. At present, the target for this export of vehicles is around 400,000 vehicles per annum. The vehicles are already under threat from not being exported or competing in the EU market because of their cross-border adjustment mechanism, effectively a carbon tax on vehicles or any product that has carbon content. The US importation of these vehicles could then serve as an alternative to the EU markets, where we would otherwise face a serious threat of the EU no longer purchasing vehicles from South Africa because of the carbon content.
All right,
we need to reduce it in any event.
There are a lot of moving pieces here, especially with trade and how it all interplays, especially in the energy market. But thank you so much for sharing your views. Our time is fast spent, unfortunately. Thank you so much for sharing your views on the show today, Greg Morkel, energy enthusiast.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.